And welcome once again to another episode of the HoriZone Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and you can find me on Twitter at Bob McDonald. Jimmy Lemke, who you can find on Twitter at PantherU, will not be joining me today. He'll be back a little later on in probably next episode. And you can always follow us on Twitter, on the podcast on Twitter, at HoriZoneRT. So this is a pretty big week because we are now getting into games that count. And joining us on this episode is the voice of the Oakland Golden Grizzlies, Neil Rule.
Bob, what's going on, man? Great to be with you guys. I'm disappointed Jimmy's a no-go today. I was looking forward to that moment. I always enjoy his banter on Twitter. But that's all right, Bob. You and I will hold it down, man. We'll be all right.
Yes. So I hope so.
We don't have a choice, Bob.
We don't. As always, I will soldier on, as I'm wont to do. So Neil, you have Neil, you've been the radio voice of Oakland for quite some time now, and I understand that you now will be seeing you a little bit more on television. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I've been doing the television here at Oakland for the last couple of years as well. Our games locally are broadcast on network TV on TV 20, which we've had a pretty good deal of success in terms of viewership. So that's something that's been a lot of fun. I mean, I've talked about it on social media. Love doing it, man. I really do. It's the best. I can't wait to show up for work every single day. I love what I do. I love the juice that gets flowing. Right before the camera comes on, or before they turn the microphones on to do radio and all that kind of stuff. I've been in the best arenas in the country. I mean, everywhere from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, out to Pauley Pavilion at UCLA, and everywhere in between. So I've kind of lived a dream in that respect, where I've been able to. That's my office. Every single day, these places are my office. 4,000 people inside the arena, and that place gets rocking and gets crazy. It's a great job, man. I love doing it.
Great. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there may be an aspect of your job you're not going to like too much. To give you all a little bit of background, Neil is not a fan of candy corn. In fact, if I understand it correctly, you absolutely loathe it.
Yeah, well, I don't think there are any fans of candy corn out there. I don't understand. At the stores, right, they just keep bringing the same stock out from last year, and they put it back out there because candy corn is just like a colored chemical wax. So it would last forever. If ever the big day happened and the nuclear winter hit, the candy corn would make it through to the other side. This stuff is grotesque. It's awful. And yes, I do hate it, and I don't understand how anyone can like it. I don't think there are any people that like it. I think the people that say they do like it are just those contrarian types that just want to be different than everybody else. Deep down, they hate it too.
I think it probably kind of ranks up there with circus peanuts as things that.
No question.
Yes. So unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but this hatred, the sheer seething hatred of candy corn, has actually spawned to something that's a pretty good cause. So what are kind of the particulars about that?
Yeah, so essentially we locked on with a new broadcasting sponsor this year, Real Team Real Estate. Is our presenting sponsor now for our radio broadcast, our television commercial partner as well. And I just got to talking with those folks, and I've been hired by them to kind of be a spokesman for their company as well. So I got to know those folks over there and somebody that owns it. And that's one of the community partners that they work with. And one of our fans on Twitter said, "Hey, how much to charity for you to eat 20 pieces of candy corn?" So I was sitting there thinking about it, and I said, "Man, that would have to be a lot of money in order to do that." But I'm not going to do that to myself. There's no amount of money for myself personally that I would eat the candy corn for. But one of the charitable causes out there that Real Team Real Estate works with is a place called Life Remodeled, and essentially what they do is they take their donations and everything that goes in, people volunteer their time, and they rebuild the neighborhoods of Detroit. And in some of the more blighted areas. They'll go in there and they'll rebuild things. And I have a lot of respect for what they do, because I'm a big guy. I'm a big believer in this, where we all see things, right? We say, wow, that's a shame. And then we go to Starbucks and get our coffee and download some iTunes songs and move on. But we don't really do anything about it. Mm-hmm. And I'm just as guilty as everybody else. I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say, well, somebody should really do something about that when I see something I don't like. And then I move on and turn on my phone or whatever. And the people at Life Remodel are actually doing it. They're putting hammers to nails and building and improving and leaving things better than they found it. Really, when it all ends for all of us, what do we have, right? Mm-hmm. Your legacy and the stuff you did, and how did you improve things? How did you give back instead of take? I have a lot of admiration for those folks and what they do. So we came up with the number. There's a GoFundMe. We're almost to that number right now. I said for $500, a $500 donation to Life Remodeled, I would eat 20 pieces of candy corn at halftime of our season opening game on camera on ESPN Plus nationwide, TV 20 in Detroit. Mm-hmm. At halftime of that game, I will eat 20 pieces of candy corn on camera, and then I'll probably vomit into a garbage can. We'll go to commercial, and then we'll come back, and I'll try to do the second half of the game.
All right. I'm not promising.
I'm not promising the vomit, by the way. I'm not. So don't donate thinking, hey, because there are people out there, Bob, that are like that say, hey, I'd love to see this guy throw up on my TV, so I'll go ahead and do it. But I'm not promising I'm going to throw up. I'm just fearful that I will.
Yes. So, just so you know, and I'm glad you mentioned that. So, I, on behalf of the HoriZone Roundtable, will actually be. In fact, I'm doing it right now. I am chipping in $50 for this for this donation. So everybody, everybody, just make sure that. It is, again, a great cause, and I'm not just doing this just because of the spectacle that will happen on November 9th, especially since, as a Cleveland State fan, I probably won't even, I might be watching, but anyway, it doesn't matter.
Bob, you're going to turn it on for halftime because you want to see the train wreck that is somebody eating candy corn. You want to see it. You can lie to me, but don't lie to yourself.
I know. I don't. Well, possibly. I assume that I will. So I'm doing that right now. I, on behalf of Ye Olde HoriZone Roundtable, will be donating $50 for this cause.
That's awesome.
We're actually doing I did this same thing earlier previously. Because Greg Campy was raising money for cancer awareness,
right.
And of course he had promised that if he had got, I think it was $15,000, that he would dye his hair pink. So and
it's trending that way, like it's going to happen.
Yes. So there you go. So all right. So yeah. So it is on Goal. It is on GoFundMe. Just do a search on Neil. You can do a search on Neil Rule or do a search on Candy Corn for Charity.
Candy corn for charity, absolutely. Bob, for real though, man, I'm blown away by that. Thank you, my friend.
Hey, no problem. Any little, as I know, any little bit helps, and I've been kind of on a charity kick this year, so not a problem. But the other thing I did want to kind of talk about today is now, and it is now obviously this will kind of be relevant to you as being the voice of the Golden Grizz, is that there has been a report that Oakland University itself is actually in negotiations to purchase the currently vacant Palace at Auburn Hills. Now, mind you, I'm not really. Now, put this to me in perspective. I'm not kind of familiar with the geography of the Oakland University area. Where is Auburn Hills as it relates to Oakland University?
Well, technically, half of Oakland University is in Auburn Hills.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's really basically it's about an 8-minute drive from the arena to the Palace of Auburn Hills.
Sure. Okay. All right. So that makes sense. So now as I understand it, now I know that this might have a couple of different ramifications potentially. as it relates to Oakland. Obviously, Oakland's home arena is the arena. That's, and from what it sounds like, they got a huge home field advantage when they pack the arena. But one of the other things that we've talked about on the show, and this is just one potential scenario, is that obviously this is going to be the last year of Motor City Madness at Little Caesars Arena, and the Horizon League is looking for another potential place to host the Horizon League tournament. And one of the provisions of that is that the venue cannot be a primary home venue for any of the Horizon League schools. Now, potentially with the purchase of the Palace at Auburn Hills, that would not be considered a primary venue for Oakland. It would just be something they have that they can host, everything from concerts to. And one of the other things I understand is that Oakland is looking to get into Division I hockey as well. What would the potential be for if Oakland purchased the Palace at Auburn Hills to put their hat in the ring to host the tournament?
Yeah, well, again, and those are all 35,000-foot decisions that go on. It's not something, that as a department, we don't really have any information or any knowledge of those discussions or anything that's going on like that. But you and I just sitting around just rapping about it, just talking about it, is it something that intrigues me, that would excite me as an employee of Oakland? Sure. Absolutely it would. As an alum, an Oakland alum as well, certainly that would be very exciting, because the Palace of Auburn Hills has withstood the test of time. Even when they closed it and the Pistons moved back downtown, it was still one of the better NBA venues in all the league. And I've been in a lot of the NBA arenas, and that one certainly I would put up there with anybody's building or anything like that. It is a great building. So, the talk is certainly exciting. As a guy that's given a large part of my life to Oakland, being as a student and now there as an employee at Oakland, it's certainly exciting discussions and stuff like that. And I'll be locked in. I'll be closely following along with everything that goes on, just the same way everybody else will. But it is exciting, and it is something that would potentially open a lot of doors if something like that were to happen.
Sure. And more to the point, would technically keep Motor City Madness being Motor City Madness. So.
Yeah, whatever, however that type of stuff breaks out too. The people at the Horizon League, I know what's important to them, and they like to keep it. They want their Horizon League conference tournament to be the experience for everybody that March Madness basketball is. And when I started this job with Oakland, we were in the Summit League, and we had to go to Sioux Falls, and we played our conference tournament in Sioux Falls every year, and it was a lot of fun. South Dakota State was about an hour away from Sioux Falls, roughly, give or take. So certainly when they played, they had an advantage in terms of number of fans in the stands. But I love that when you walk into that neutral court, that when you're in that building and it's March Madness, all the other conference tournaments are going on. I really think that neutral court, separate venue is really the true experience for March Madness. I'm not a big, hosting it at a member's building or anything like that.
Okay.
I like that feel. I really do like that feel of the quote unquote neutral court and the whole experience of March Madness. That's what really encapsulates it for me.
Sure. Yeah. And I know the location, the kind of the tournament, conference tournament location has been, as I'm sure you can appreciate, the subject of a great debate among Horizon League fans. I know when we did the fall fan forum, that came up as well. This is kind of one of those occasions where I wish Jimmy was on here, because I know he has some opinions about this as well. So it'll probably be something that we will continue to discuss as the Horizon League continues through the process. Personally, I have been of the opinion that somehow the tournament will end up back in Indianapolis. personally, mostly because I thought that I was a big fan of thinking. I thought, in my own personal opinion, I thought the location, just the geographical location of Indianapolis was better suited. But that's going to be a discussion that we'll probably be witnessing as we move a little further into the season. So,
right.
So one of the other things, speaking of which, obviously this week, we finally get some games that count, and I don't really take all that much stock in the exhibition games. As a Cleveland State fan, obviously, I was really happy that they waxed their exhibition opponent by 47 points. If I'm a Detroit fan, I'm a little worried that I came this close to losing to Wayne State in the exhibition 3 years in a row. But by and large, one of the things, I guess my question to you would be, and maybe not necessarily specific to Oakland, but in general, because I know Oakland, and you can actually just speak to this about Oakland. What is the kind of the benefit of the exhibition in getting these Horizon League schools ready for the specifically for the non-conference that's coming up this week?
Hey, Bob, sorry about that, man. It was cutting out on me. I got you. I picked up the gist of the question with
Sure.
what you were saying.
Uh-huh.
But, yeah, so, I mean, look, it's the only thing that people have to go on, so naturally they're gonna
Sure.
draw a lot of conclusions from that. But people, with these exhibitions, what people need to keep in mind, if you're a coach, these things serve a purpose in that you're trying to figure things out, and you're trying to see what works. You're trying to see who works with who, and it's really experimental. And these games, and you see that, right? You see that where teams will lose to a Division II school, and it's becoming more and more common.
Sure.
And it's just a situation where if you're a coach, you're trying to figure some things out. And obviously, if it were a game in the season, a lot of times you would coach it differently and do the matchups differently, but it's an exhibition. And you're trying to figure out exactly what you have and exactly where you want to put everybody and all those types of things. So people need to remember that when you see some of the games, there's combinations that are out on the floor that would typically not be out on the floor if the games were games of record. So, I mean, people need to take that kind of stuff with a grain of salt. Now, nobody ever wants to lose. I mean, anytime you go out on the floor, you want to win. That's why you're there. That's why you're playing the game. But with all that being said, I'm of that opinion too. And it's just that sometimes we make a little bit too much of these exhibition results because people remember, what's everybody's take on exhibition football, like NFL preseason football? Nobody cares with what happens in there. Nobody ever cares. I don't know why.
Except if you're a Browns fan, Neil. Except if you're a Browns fan.
Well, yeah. Well, but again, though, I mean, it's the same thing, right? It's an exhibition game where the results don't count and they don't matter.
Yep.
And that's what it is. I mean, people do get a little worked up, and I know why. It's because that's all you've seen. That's all you have to go on. So I get it. I like exhibition football. I just can't wait till we get it going for real this week.
Sure. Yeah, and to your point, and I want to allude to the Detroit game a little bit. You're talking about a situation where Mike Davis is in a complete rebuild over there. And so he's got to figure out what works. So, obviously,
he's got to take a look at everything too.
Absolutely.
I mean, from man 1 to man 12. I mean, he's got to figure out exactly what he can work with. That was a great hire by Detroit, by the way.
Yes.
I really double clutched when I saw that. He's going to be a factor. He's going to have Detroit being a factor in the Horizon League pretty soon.
Good, because we need it. We were down last year, so yeah, we were down last year, and so as I'm looking at this, and speaking of all the preseason, because obviously we're looking at all of the preseason rankings. Everybody's got doing their prognostications for the season, and some folks are doing the full and every NCAA team ranking them and everything. And I look and I've been looking at. I've noticed a trend specifically among kind of the national guys is that as down as the Horizon League was last year, it seems to me that a lot of the national guys are carrying that kind of down year over into the next year. And I kind of wanted to get your assessment of if there's any kind of weight to that. I mean, we've had conversations about that in episodes past, and I'm of the opinion that it's not exactly. I thought we hit bottom last year. I think the league's got nowhere to go but up. But from as I say that, it seems to me that not everybody shares my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, in the world and time and space where I live in, the national guys, with all due respect to all of them, and certainly as a guy that calls Horizon League games, certainly I'm grateful for the coverage that they do. And anytime the Horizon League can get the mentions nationally from the national guys, I'm all about it. But with all due respect to everyone, I wouldn't have you ask me to break down the ACC because I don't know. I don't live in that world. When I roll into a building, I'm ready to go, and I'll be ready to call. I'll be ready to call the Toledo game on Friday when Toledo comes into the arena, and then subsequently when Western Michigan comes in the following week, I'll be brushed up on my MAC notes and be ready to go because I owe that to the audience to be as informed as possible. But with all that being said, I'm not around the ACC, so for me to offer up an opinion for something that I don't particularly spend a lot of time on looking at. I mean, I watch it on TV like everybody else when I'm not working. But, I mean, it's unless you know, you don't know, as dumb as that sounds. And I'm very capable of saying dumb things. But unless you know, you don't know. And that's really what I see with the mid-major game. A lot of people are more reactionary to what happens than proactionary in that they think they know. And I think I know. You think you know. We all have our opinions that we have cooked up right now. But
sure.
The beautiful thing about it is they're going to play it out on the floor, and we're going to find out exactly what the scenarios are. So, I mean, for some national people to offer up that this is going to be a bad year for the Horizon League, I mean, I don't know that I buy all that because Drew McDonald in Northern Kentucky, he's amassed quite a resume. In the award section of his resume, it's getting pretty stocked. And Loudon Love is a good player. I mean, that guy's an absolute beast. And so, I mean, there's players in this league. There's always players in this league.
Sure.
And it's one of those situations. The team I cover, Oakland's in a bit of a transition. This is the first time I can remember where we don't have a quote unquote NBA caliber player. The Keith Bensons into the Kay Felders and the Travis Baders, and then moving up into the Kendrick Nunns and guys that are, have some NBA clock on their resume. And right now at Oakland, in terms of how that works out, we're in a bit of a transition year. But you can't question the talent that Greg Campy's put through there and all the statistical national champions that he's produced. I mean, you don't have to believe me, believe the resume. Check the facts. So, it's one of those things too where it ebbs and flows, and we notice that a little bit more in the mid-major level where teams like Kentucky and UCLA and stuff like that can just replenish the coffers right away with a couple of 5 stars and a couple of McDonald's All-Americans, and away you go. And a little bit more cultivation of talent in the mid-major game. And look, I'll be honest with you too. I mean, the way that we're seeing the transfer rules be applied and everything like that hasn't done mid-major basketball any favors. I mean, let's just be real about it. That's the kind of space I live in. We can talk about it. That hasn't helped the way that's been set up, but that's another discussion for another day.
That's a discussion. I know that's a discussion we've had many times, and that vein in my head always pops out.
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys, look, Cleveland State, man, look at that. A couple of years ago, look at that roster they would have had, man. I mean, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, and the rug kind of got pulled out from under you guys with what happened there. And I don't know the particulars of it or anything like that. Yeah, but I'm just going by what happened.
That was a kind of a perfect storm, and I know every time I hear about it, it's one of those. Yeah, unfortunately, there's it's one of those situations where, and it's funny you mentioned that the Cleveland State situation, because I know when talking to, reading up on and talking to, Dennis Felton, who's over at Cleveland State now, he's kind of the mindset that, okay, you have these transfers, but then you also can potentially bring some folks in. Which he did with which he's doing this year. He's got Alex Von Eichelberger coming in from DePaul, so he kind of sees. I see from that standpoint, he kind of sees that it's a new ball game. It's kind of a little fluid. Whereas previously, I'm a big Gary Waters guy, but I also saw near the end he was. I don't want to say giving up, but he was trying some things that have not worked for him in the past to kind of, as kind of a stopgap measure, and it just, but yeah, it's one of those things. But and I also see it within the and Northern Kentucky has had issues with transfers as well, but at the same time, they've also brought some. They still have retained a pretty high caliber of talent.
Right. Well, and you know what's funny about it too, Bob, is like we're talking about the perception of the league being down or the talent of the league being down. I would flip that around and say the coaching. I'm venturing a guess. The coaching has never been better in this league, and we're talking about the Dennis Feltons of the world. That again, you can't question his resume. You can't. I mean, he's done it. He's been there.
Well,
won.
To be fair, Neil, I actually initially did question his resume and then was proven wrong very, very quickly.
Very quickly, exactly. And
well, when I say very quickly, I mean it's a tournament time because he had the run of the tournament. So
absolutely. I
was an open naysayer, but I'm on board now.
Hey, it takes a man to admit when he's wrong. No doubt about that, Bob. But yeah, I mean, you parlay in there with Mike Davis now at Detroit.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know Greg Kampe is as accomplished as any coaches in all of college basketball. So I would flip that on its ear and say the coaching maybe has never been better in this league from top to bottom in terms of the coaches that are in this league now. There's some name brands in there. There's no doubt. It won't be long. This is mid-major at Division I athletics. It works in a cycle. That's just the way it's always been.
Yeah. So I'm actually glad you brought up kind of the situation in Oakland, and for me it's kind of Oakland's kind of a wild card because I'm not. I first and foremost I kind of wasn't used to them kind of being a little down last year. I know they had obviously some real issues with injuries and everything, and so that did not help their cause last year. So from somebody from kind of an outsider's perspective, what do you make of their chances this year? What do you make of their chances this year? Is this kind of a rebuilding year, or is this one of those never underestimate Greg Kampe years? I'm actually genuinely intrigued as to kind of what direction they're heading in, because honestly, it for me it's kind of undiscovered country with them to see kind of where they're at, not having any idea where they're going to be this year.
Well, it's funny because I was trying to figure out a way to describe what I thought this season was going to be for Oakland, and then Coach Kampe put it best at our media day that we had last week over at the arena, and he just said it. I thought perfectly. I don't know. I don't know what I have. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know what we're going to do. Again, we don't have that NBA caliber player, and it's the first time in a long time that's been the situation at Oakland. So I think this thing will be kind of a work in progress as things go. He's going to have to coach a little bit more, I guess you would say, from that perspective, in that it's going to be a little bit harder work because you don't have the NBA guy, because when you have Kendrick Nunn, everyone's a good coach. When you got Kendrick Nunn on the floor or Kay Felder on the floor, you have to figure out ways to make all that work. But he talked about that at media day. He said, I don't know. And that I kind of second that. You're looking for me to answers, man. I don't have any for you. We're going to have to jump it up in the air and see what the story is. And for the first time in a long time, but we don't know coming into the season. So I wish I had something cutting edge Some fancy broadcast talk for you. But I don't know, man.
Speaking of broadcast, I know there's one new gentleman on your team that I swear he does follow the HoriZone League, HoriZone Roundtable on Twitter. Sadly, I'm not even going to attempt to try to pronounce his name.
Dan Waterstrat. Yeah, he's a former player at Oakland. He's a local kid here in the Detroit area. Went to Rutgers initially, then transferred here to Oakland. Played pro over in Romania for a few years after the college days were over. And I actually, before Matt Derry and I did the games the last couple of years, Dan Waterstrat was a guy I did games with for 2 seasons before that. When Kay Felder was here in his prime. So Dan and I have experience together. Plus, he's a great dude. A, he's just a good dude all around, but B, he's a good dude to work with. Like, he really likes to have fun. You know, we cut it up a little bit on the broadcast. You know, we'll goof around a little bit, maybe a little bit more than most would. But I don't know, I kind of like it better that way. I always said with I don't want my announcers to be too announcery, if that makes any sense.
By the way, Sawani Babatunde was who I was referring to, and I'm sure I butchered that.
You weren't too bad. Salumi, Babatunde Salumi. So there you were.
See, I missed the end there. That's what.
Yeah.
Got to get a better pair of glasses.
Yeah. We're intrigued. He's a beast, man. There's no doubt.
Yeah, because he's he's one of your new big men. So that he's probably one of those wild cards that kind of contribute to the whole idea of I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was going on the diatribe about the broadcast there, but yeah, I mean that's the story. I don't know. We'll see. But I mean, he's a beast of a man. When he walks in the room, you know he's in the room. So I'm intrigued to see that very raw. He just recently started playing basketball. It's not something he grew up doing. He was more of a soccer guy, originally born in Nigeria and played soccer. He was a kicker for his high school football team, and also was a defensive end that got a couple of sacks a game. So I mean, he's athletic and he's a monster. So he's really raw though. So it's going to be a work in progress with him. But he's a great dude too. And the time I've got to talk with him, just an impressive guy to have a conversation with as well. And he was a very, very high academic achiever in high school as well. So he's a guy I like being around, no question about it.
Great. The one other thing I wanted to discuss is obviously with the arrival of Mike Davis, because I'm a bit, as you know, I'm a huge believer in rivalries in conference rivalries. I'm still hoping for mine between Cleveland State and Youngstown State, but that's a whole other episode for a whole other day. But one of the things that obviously has come to the fore and is this rivalry between Oakland and Detroit, and of course because of where Detroit has been the past couple of years, it's been pretty one-sided in Oakland's favor. So with the arrival of Mike Davis, where does that lead this rivalry now? Now that you obviously have Greg Campy, who's been a staple at Oakland for many years, and then you have a Mike Davis who's been to a Final Four, and has a resume of turning around programs in pretty short order.
Yeah, it's if you're an Oakland fan, and I said this earlier on in our discussion, Mike Davis is going to make Detroit a factor. I'm telling you that right now. I mean, I can't promise you it'll be this season or even possibly next season, but they're going to be in the mix soon. I'm a big Mike Davis fan. We played Texas Southern a couple of times with Oakland, so I've gotten a chance to call his games and his coaching style and see what he's all about. And, it's just going to be a matter of time. So, again, that was in my opinion, which doesn't really mean anything, but in my opinion, that was a great hire for Detroit. And what comes along with all that, with down the road probably contending for HoriZone League titles, is that there's a new shot of blood into this rivalry. And again, as he gets things turned around, they're going to be a factor for Oakland and for the rest of the HoriZone League. But yeah, there'll be some fresh air with the rivalry. There's no question about it, because it is something where I'm even surprised at how this thing has taken off. This Metro Series rivalry and everything that goes along with it. Our student athletes are jazzed when they play Detroit. And we've had teams that haven't been having the best of seasons. Our women's soccer team was really struggling last year, and they got the win over Detroit, and that was the season for them. I mean, that really sent everybody over the top, and everybody was ecstatic, and they were pumped to play that game, and it showed when they played. I mean, when you have a rival like that, and I equate it to the college football fans, if you have a true rival out there, that can impact your season. If you get that win, if things aren't going the way you want them to go, it can salvage something when you beat your rival. And that's the level that this Oakland Detroit thing's on. I mean, it can supersede what's going on in your season, where if you win it, it makes you feel good, regardless of what's happening around you.
Yeah. And that's kind of that's always kind of where I've gone with the whole rivalries. I know during our fan forum discussion, there was kind of a talk about kind of the measure of the rivalry being, the caliber of the teams. But you hit the nail on the head. It's one of those games where if you have, even if you're having a down year, if you beat your rival, that is going to be that's a crowning that's a key thing for the year, and so that's definitely where I come out on that, because I know we were this part of it's kind of a spawn from we had a conversation about this whole idea of a potential rivalry between Northern Kentucky and Wright State. Which to us which actually brings me kind of to the last thing I wanted to talk about, is that you have two teams where with the preseason polls out, specifically the one that was presented by the HoriZone League, is that Wright State is at the top and Northern Kentucky is in the was picked second in the league standing. So. With those two, I really think it's kind of interchangeable between the two. You can make an argument one way or the other. Is there a potential for possibly a third team to get in the mix in there? Maybe a UIC, maybe a Green Bay, or maybe even a surprise team that we're not even thinking about at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say we've all kind of been waiting on UIC to take that step, right? To take that step where they get in the mix, and that day is going to be coming soon. And I really like their guard play. And not enough people are talking about UIC's guard play, in my mind. No,
I think UIC's probably got the best, probably has one of the best, if not the best, backcourt in the conference at this point in time.
Right.
I really do.
And you look at the landscape of college basketball right now. It's guard dominated, and even more so at the mid-major level. Whenever you see these teams that make a run, it's always because they got the point guard they can depend on, or they have the two guard that can really score it. And I really like what UIC's put together. And Coach McClain over there with what they have going on, it's a scenario for UIC where they're finna, as the kids would say, they're finna be a factor pretty soon. And I've been waiting on that as well, and I'm a big fan of their backcourt. So, yeah, I think it's very realistic where you could see UIC kind of poke their head in there and say, "Hey guys, I think you all forgot about us a little bit," and that certainly could be a scenario that plays itself out.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's we've been long, and it's interesting when you look at where UIC was not even 2 years ago, when they couldn't even win a Division I game. And right. to be kind of where they are now, and I think that the fact that they were in which one were postseason tournament? I can never remember. It's the CIT or the CBI. I can never remember which one they were in. I think it was the CIT.
I had that stuff in front of me during a broadcast. I believe it was the CBI.
Let's go with that. Yeah. Yeah, so
okay, let's do it.
They went to they did really well in that, and I've always, funny enough, I always have those tertiary tournaments, the CBIs, the CITs of the world. I'm not a fan. of those for my own various reasons. But with UIC doing very well in those tournaments, you see kind of a foundation for them moving forward, especially since they played those tournament games without Dikembe Dixon, so they were kind of already moving forward anyway to next year.
Right.
And so when you get some additional games for that backcourt with Marcus Adi and Tarkus Ferguson to kind of take it to the next level. And when you're looking at it from a standpoint of the Horizon League, which the Horizon League, as we all know, is a pretty guard heavy league, it's championed by its guards. That's a big thing. That's a huge deal.
Yeah, if you have the best backcourt, you always have a shot, man. That's just the way it is. Marcus Adi, he's a great player. I've gotten a chance, obviously, as you know, to watch him up close a couple times a year. And Tarkus Ferguson's been good as well, and they're the team, man. They're the team I've been waiting on to, like I said, just kind of poke their head up in there and say, hey, what's going on? And again, going back to it, I think it's very realistic to expect UIC to be in that mix too. Sure.
All right, well that kind of wraps it up for us. So Neil, where can we find you online, and where can we hear where can everybody hear their games? Those who are kind of outside the Oakland area.
Yeah, the iHeartRadio app. Search WDFN. That's our flagship station in Detroit. So WDFN, 11:30 a.m. That's the radio station. Then, as you guys know, I do all the television as well for ESPN Plus, TV20 in the Detroit area. But I know everyone's got their ESPN subscriptions and everything fired up. They're ready for HoriZone basketball. I'm ready to bring it to you guys.
On my list of things to do.
Yeah. What's that?
I haven't got my ESPN Plus yet, but I'm working on it.
Okay. Yeah. You know what, guys? I'm telling you this, and I know, and I see on the social media when people talk about it, ESPN Plus is the best value in television at $5 a month, especially if you like soccer at all. You get pretty much every soccer game in the world outside of La Liga. There's constantly a Major League Baseball game on every single day. There's at least one Major League Baseball game on. There's an NHL game on every single day. I mean, you don't. It's a great value, and I'm telling you guys, man. Like I'm a subscriber, and I love it. And I'm saying that independently of the fact that that's where I broadcast on. I'm just saying, as a sports fan, like the rest of you guys, a guy that just likes to watch sports, I would get rid of everything else before I got rid of my ESPN Plus.
Yep. Well, the way the Horizon League is set up, you can't get rid of your ESPN yet, but you should get your ESPN Plus. And I've been holding off on it, even though I'm a big 30 for 30 guy, and I know they have all the 30 for 30. So
on demand, brother. I
gotta get off my butt and get that done.
Yeah, on demand. So, if you like 30 for 30s, it's worth it right there. $5 a month, and they're right there. You fire them up all the time.
I'm a 30 for 30 guy. So if you're following the Horizon League, you need to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just for no other reason for basketball season. So yeah, absolutely. All right. So all right. Well, again, thank you, Neil. Thank you for coming on. Great conversation with you today. And folks, as always, you can find episodes of the HoriZone Roundtable on sportshacks.com, HAX.com, and you can find us wherever you find podcast apps. My new favorite, which is Amazon, my Amazon Echo device. Love that. And you can also look on your Google Home devices as well. So, and that's it. So, thank you very much for listening.